All right, everybody, welcome back to Dicebearers podcast. It has been like 2 months.
Yeah, a bit too long.
Been a little bit of a time, has it not? But we are back today to talk about the Halls of Thranduil. Chris, how are you feeling about this one?
The elf lists are an interesting one. I think this one adds the most dynamic gameplay to the elven factions, while still feeling like the most limited in terms of options until you hit allies. So I really like this list because it kind of brings a little bit of everything, but then can really specialize into certain play styles depending if you want to go pure or what allies you bring.
If you like meat shields, this is the elf list to play.
Yes.
Because you get the best, cheapest meat shields.
Yes.
But beyond that, I think this is a really cool and interesting list to play. It has a lot of room to edge out more out of your models. I think more than the other elf lists do. And we'll talk about why I think that in a moment. But let's talk about the models you can bring in this elf list. What do you think of the range?
I think the range is absolutely stunning, to be completely honest. There's a lot of really, really nice models. The exception being a couple of the poses of some of those resin sculpts can be a bit how you going.
The dual sword Thranduil is just a joke at this point to me. He's just like, you have this overall great range, then he's just standing there like,
yes,
swinging his hands like a weirdo.
I think he's the model that's designed to be the cheerleading Thranduil. I'm in the second rank Thranduil, maybe.
Yeah.
But outside of probably that pose and one of the Legolas poses, which I mean, there's like 500 of them, so that doesn't matter, right? I think it's a really cool range. There's a lot of resin. If you can deal with resin and you're okay using resin, this is a stunning army for you to play and collect.
The only resin kit that's really an issue is the warriors.
The warrior kit.
Because like the heroes in resin are usually okay, and because the single model is not too much trouble to work with, like it's fine. But having warriors in resin is a little bit rough.
Yes. And
Palace Guard are in plastic, so are Rangers, so it's kind of unfortunate that your main warriors are in resin.
And your only cav is resin.
That's true, they are. But that's not, again, if it's a low number of models, it's not too bad to deal with. It's when it's on your troop that it's...
Yes, when it's your main model brought to the list, that's when it becomes problematic.
But other than that, I love this. Like, I mean, I picked this on aesthetic. Like, it is my favorite looking elf army of the three, by far. I enjoy painting it a lot. I think it's got a lot of options on how you paint it, how you approach it, a lot of great details, and like good mix of like details and then space where you can be expressive on the models, which is cool.
Yes, and I think having a healthy blend of those two is what makes a model range go from good to excellent. And I think this list is one of those clear excellent lists in the Lord of the Rings game. And like the elk Thranduil was voted the best model.
Yeah, it is, and it is a great model. I agree fully. I need one.
Yes.
If anyone has one, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just leave a comment. I'll leave my address down below, and maybe
we definitely won't get mugged after that. Yeah.
All right, let's do a quick overview of the list. So, strengths: elves with +1 to wound.
Insane.
Potential +2 to wound because you still have hand and have weapons in your entire army.
Yes.
Which is the terrifying part. I think that's something during Clash, I started like towards game 5 and 6, I just started being like, oh, 2-hand as well. +2 to wound.
And people are like, oh, what? No.
Yeah, people are like, oh, you're wounding me on 4s. I'm sorry. I was playing against dwarves and I'm like, sorry, 4s to wound. Which is just rude. A very wide troop choice, actually, surprisingly. You have like 4 or 5 different warrior profiles in the list, which gives you a lot of versatility in how you're building your list.
And I think the important thing with that is they all do very unique things. It's not just similar style of troops. They're very unique based on which one you bring.
Yes. And versatile hero choices. You have a pretty good roster of different heroes that do different things in your lists. Yeah. You've got 3 named and 3 named, 3 unnamed.
Yeah.
But the main thing that makes you so versatile is that Thranduil can be like 4 different heroes based on how you kit him.
Literally.
And we're gonna go through it. We have in our list we have 3 completely different setups for Thranduil and his equipment. Just showing how versatile he is as a leader.
Yes.
What are our downsides, Chris?
There's a couple of them. The biggest one is, as all elven factions are, you have expensive troops. Your cheapest model comes in at 9 points base, which is hefty considering you're often paying 14 points for the combos of things you want, 17 for the cavalry. There is expensive models hitting you every time, and that's even on the bank account expensive as well. Like,
at least it's elves, so you don't need that many. It's not Lake Town where you need 40.
That is true.
Okay,
Yes.
trust me. Okay.
Yeah, the other big one as well is you have to pay 2 points to have a spear on your baseline troops. Obviously, there are other troops that can circumvent this.
And this spear does come with upsides, but it means you can't get cheap spears in this list. You can't get a 10-point cheap spear elf. Your minimum is 11.
Yeah.
And obviously, it comes with upsides.
Yes.
But that is something to consider because it can eat into your points in your list when you're doing a list build.
Exactly. And the final issue with the list is if Thranduil gets sniped, if Thranduil gets pulled out of position, if anything happens to Thranduil, your entire buffing circle is just gone.
You lose a lot of, there's a lot of points tied up in some, I think this army, at least one of the profiles as we get into, pays for Thranduil's buffs.
Yes.
It's the profile is balanced around what Thranduil gives them. And so if he dies, you're like, oh, I just lost an extra, on top of him dying, there's an extra 20 points of value I've spent that is just gone along with him.
Yeah.
Let's explain why that is.
Yes.
With the army bonus. So, Mirkwood Rangers from this force do not count towards the army's bow limit. Additionally, while they're within 3 of Thranduil, or, say it with me kids, Palace Guard Captains, Mirkwood Elf Captains, Palace Guard, Mirkwood Cavalry, and Mirkwood Elves will also gain +1 to their wound roll when making strikes. So,
insane. Holy cow. Mirkwood Rangers don't count towards the bow limit? That's so crazy. Wow. That's amazing. Seriously though, +1 to wound on anything that's not an unarmored model.
Yes.
Is very
It's on all your combat elves, basically.
Yes. Doesn't apply to the named characters, which is a bit sad.
I wish Legolas had it, or even I wish either of them had it.
One of them had it, it would be fantastic, right? But other than that,
if anything, surely Tauriel should have it because Legolas is going through his rebellious phase in the movie.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
So Tauriel should get it because she's like my king.
Yeah, maybe she should get +1 to wound Killy. I don't know.
All right, well, let's get into the profile that brings us this terrifying buff. Thranduil, King of the Woodland Realm, for 100 points base. That's not a lot.
It's a bit too cheap, honestly. It feels sometimes.
But we'll get into it. Well, look, at his 100-point level, he's an elf Mirkwood infantry hero of legend. Excellent. Fight 6 with a 2+ shoot. Excellent. Strength 4, D4, 2 attacks, 3 wounds, courage 6, 3 might, 3 will, 3 fate. Base, he has an elven mage sword and elven cloak. Heroic actions: accuracy, strike, strength, defense. So a solid quartet. His options are where he gets interesting because that baseline profile does not seem fitting of a top tier elven hero. If you compare him to a Glorfindel, Gilgalad, even Celebron, what you're seeing here, he kind of gets trounced by them. But he has the additional elven made sword, the Circlet of Kings, the elk, the heavy armor, the horse, and an elf bow. So elf bow and horse and armor, self-explanatory. You can get a D6, you can get a horse, you can get a bow to shoot as 2+. Excellent, all good. The additional elven made sword is a 30-point upgrade, which when he is equipped, he becomes 3 attacks base and gains fight 7. Additionally, he gains the Blade Lord special rule. When he has the Blade Lord special rule means that when he has the infantry keyword, Thranduil receives +1 attack. So he becomes base 4 attacks on foot.
Yes.
Furthermore, Thranduil, King of the Woodland Realm, receives an additional attack for each enemy model he's engaged with after the first. So if he's fighting 2 models, he has 5 attacks. If he's fighting 3 models, he has 6 attacks! This bonus is determined at the start of each fight and lasts until all strikes are resolved. And this is why he's so versatile as a hero, because thanks to this rule, he can be a foot hero that's putting out big damage and the dice of a cavalry hero. Not when making strikes, he doesn't have a knockdown, but being able to have 4 strikes base means that he's always on par with those, 3 attack with a horse charging heroes.
Yes.
Which is so huge in terms of consistency. It means that you're not reliant on the charge to have a high dice count and to be reliable. And even more, you can support him to be 5 dice always at a minimum. And that means that on foot, he is actually extremely safe and extremely hard to threaten because rolling 5 dice at fight 7, you're just not going to lose very often,
Yeah, literally, it's exactly that. And being on a 25 mil base means it's incredibly hard for your opponent to actually catch you out. You can maneuver in and out of your lines really easily. You can snake in between battle lines. You can, find those little gaps, call that heroic combat, and scare the crap out of 4 different heroes and a banner just because you have so much dice
mobility, yeah.
and so much mobility happening in such a small
not so much
space.
You don't have distance, but you have the ability to get into places a cav can't.
Yes, exactly. Which is a big deal, I think, for heroes.
Yeah. Next, the Circlet of Kings is another unique upgrade.
Yes, here we go.
We're not done. He's got more unique. We've got 2 more to go, okay? He's not done. The Circlet of Kings allows Thranduil to cast the magical powers Aura of Dismay and Nature's Wrath once per game. The spell is automatically cast, counting as a result of 6 with no will needed to be expended. So what do these 2 spells do? Aura of Dismay is a 6-inch bubble for allies, giving them the Terror special rule. You basically become Angmar.
Except a 6-inch bubble.
Except a 6-inch bubble, only off of 1 hero. But yeah, basically you turn actually it's even better because it affects non-Angmar models. It affects everyone.
It affects everything.
It's just insane. Actually, you get Kurdan attached.
Yeah, basically, yes.
you get Kurdan attached. And Nature's Wrath. So Nature's Wrath is a once per game 3-inch knock prone.
Insane. If you have
autocast, by the way.
And even if there's someone that has a 3/1/1 cap named hero floating around, something like that, it's still counted as being rolled a 6 to cast it. That's still hard to stop.
Resist. Yeah. Yes. Either you're gonna burn might, they're going for a 1 in 6, or you're gonna burn might. And ideally, personally, I basically never let my opponent roll a resist roll. The way I like to use this is, even if I'm knocking prone only 4 to 5 models, that's it. That's all I need.
I was gonna say, yes.
You're just looking for one turn where 5 to 6 of your elves get to be perfectly safe and get almost guaranteed kills, and that's it. Because maybe this is let's think about it. I'd say the Aura of Dismay is probably about 15 points. The knock prone is about 10 points. All it needs to earn you is 10 points, which is maybe 2 warriors killed or a warrior saved.
Mostly,
literally
one model.
Actually, even literally think about it this way: if it's a 10-point part of this upgrade, if you save 1 elf from dying by knocking prone someone who otherwise got on a strike, you've paid your points back.
Yes.
So you should try and avoid being overly coy, just holding it. Just use it turn 1 or turn 2 of combat to get yourself snowballing.
Yes, the earlier an elf list snowballs the game, the harder it will win the late game, because it's not running away on courage tests, and if it starts to outnumber your opponent, there's 15 other things going wrong for them.
Yeah, exactly. And on to our final unique Thranduil specific upgrade. We're not done, okay? The Elk. So the Elk is a horse, effectively, at move 10. Fight 5, strength 4, d5, so armored horse. Importantly, though, it has, for 1, 2 wounds, which means it needs to take 2 wounds to die. So you got, one random orc bow, pew! Oh, my elk can shrug it off. I'm chilling. But more importantly, if Thranduil charges into combat while riding his elk, Thranduil strikes are resolved at strength 5.
Yes.
That's pretty good. It's not, it's not a lance, but against most heroes is where it's actually impactful. It's looking at d7 is where it's most impactful. So either dwarves or most high tier heroes will be sitting at d7.
Yeah. Most heroes and the super elite is what this fight strength 5 is going
or d5 hordes. Either. To be fair, the reality is if he charges 2 d5 models on the elk or on the horse with the extra sword, he's gonna probably kill them either way. But it just ups your reliability. It just means that you're not gonna flub it. It's force to wound d5 models is crazy with 4 dice, 8 dice with knockdown.
Exactly. Yes. It is an insane profile, I think. When you look at it all put together, that 100 points, like I said, it feels a bit cheap for what you get, knowing what is to come. But I think all the upgrades in of themselves do actually, it's 20 points for the elk, so you're paying an extra 10 points to get the extra wound and the +1 strength. There is
That's pretty reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot you're getting out of each of those upgrades, right? 30 points for the extra sword, where you're getting up to stupid amount of dice and an extra pip of fight value. The circlet, just that Awe of Dismay in and of itself, just telling your opponent, you're coach 2, just stand still with 2/3 of your army, mate. It's insane how good they are.
Let's talk quickly about builds on him. We'll talk more into when we list building, but effectively, he starts at 130 in my opinion. Either you're going to bring him with the sword or circlet and a bow. Yeah. If you're playing low points, depending on what you want to play. I personally would just go circlet bow. And then you have a few different options. I think circlet horse armor is a really good low points build for him.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that you don't need the armor when you're on foot thanks to the Elven Cloak and thanks to heroic defense, because you can avoid shooting with the cloak. And then if you're ever into something scary, the D6 probably isn't what's going to be saving you against a bowl or an Azog. It's going to be calling the heroic defense, so they're winning on 6s. So your defense, if you're on foot, I don't think is actually that important. And I think especially if you're trying to save points on Thranduil to bring more elves, especially at lower points, the heavy armor is just a low impact upgrade. And you just, as long as you're playing correctly, you don't really need it, in my opinion.
Yes. But then all the way on the other side of the spectrum, circlet, blade, elk, heavy armor, the full kitchen sink.
Was he on 190?
I think he goes to 190.
Around 190. Yeah. I think if you're mounting him, you need to bring the armor because you lose the Elven Cloak and you're just on a bigger base, so you're more vulnerable. and so on and so forth. So the armor is like, essentially the armor is paired with your mount. Like they just come in a package. You just need it.
And I don't think it matters which mount you bring. I think you bring armor on
both.
either of
Yes,
them.
I agree. And I think that the elf bow at 2+ to hit is just insane. If you can fit it in your list without messing up your mist building, I just do.
Yeah, I think for me, the bow is one of those things that if I'm like 6 points shy of my list cap, then I'll just throw the bow in, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if I'm like, I have 11 points left in my list building, I'm not gonna not bring an extra elf. I'm gonna bring the elf and leave the bow at home, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's, for me, that decision making. But I also know a lot of people who swing the exact opposite way, where it's the elf bow is the first thing I buy. Thranduil costs 105 points.
Oh, and also we missed 3 of his special rules, by the way. Only one of them. He has expert rider and woodland creature, which are fairly minor rules, but he has, importantly, fleet foot, which gives his mount his woodland creature.
Yes.
So you can charge in the forest and run people down.
Exactly.
Which is pretty good. I mean, it won't come into effect on a lot of boards, but when it does, if there's a forest and someone's like, oh, your Thranduil can't charge me now, you just go, slam him, just boom.
Can you imagine if Thranduil, King of the Woodland Realm, didn't have Fleetfoot? Can you imagine the outcry?
But Glorfindel does.
Yeah, but Glorfindel does,
But I think that's enough on Thranduil himself.
Yeah.
Onto his problem child. Let's go.
Yes. So, you get Legolas Greenleaf, Prince of Mirkwood. He is an elf, Mirkwood infantry hero of valor. Importantly as well, this is a different profile to the armies of Lord of the Rings Legolas.
Yeah, he's 10 points cheaper.
Ish. Yes. So he has armor, elf bow, and elven-made daggers as his war gear base, so you don't have to pay for the armor, and he's 95 points for the privilege as well. I should do his stats as well. His movement 6, fight 6, 3+ shoot, strength 4, defense 5, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 6. He's 3 might, 2 will, 3 fate. And he has as heroic actions, heroic accuracy, and everyone's favourite, heroic strike as well. He has an elven cloak for 5 points. He has a horse for 10 points, and he has Ocrist for 10 points as well. So Ocrist is a elven-made hand-and-a-half sword that gives Bane to orcs, Urukai, and goblins, effectively. So if you're playing a good versus evil matchup, you bring this weapon. If not, you can probably leave it at home.
Yeah, it doesn't really... I mean, giving access to hand-and-a-half is nice, but it's not really that important. It's not what you bring Legolas for, and you can bring another elf, and the elf can hand-and-a-half, and the elf can get +1 to wounds, so...
Yeah, there's trade-offs to it, but I think if you're playing good versus evil, if you know there is a lot of a particular thing floating the boat...
Well, really, anything that's not evil men, it's insane against.
Exactly, right? So, for example, I knew a lot of Thranduil's Hall players bringing Ocrist back when the Warren Rohan book dropped and all the Isengard Legend Allegiance came out. Because people were just mulching orcs left, right, and centre with it. It's stuff like that that's good for, right?
Yeah, Orcbane is a very nice...
Exactly. And it can mean that you can go hero hunting a little bit with him because your damage spike's really high.
He becomes very, very good at killing captains, essentially.
Yeah. Even with just the one wound that goes through, you still have threat to kill him.
Yeah, either you might just force... realistically, you just force all their might onto their fate roll, effectively.
Yeah, basically, yes. He's got 2 special rules. He's got Woodland Creature. Again, imagine if he didn't have it, I think it'd be...
The whole army has it. It's all elves.
Yes. And he has Deadly Shot, which is probably the most famous thing Legolas has in the game.
Probably one of the most insane rules in the game, too.
It's up there, literally. It's up there with some of the best rules in the entire game. So... This is a rule that basically says Legolas can fire his bow 3 times in the shooting phase rather than just once. Each of these can be made against a different target. Alternatively, and here's where it gets really upsetting, Legolas may instead choose to make 1 shot. But in this case, he will always hit on a roll of a 2+, regardless of in the way tests, if the target is engaged in combat, or any other factors, including modifiers. Magical powers and so forth are examples of that. In other words, Legolas...
Nice blinding light, Lamau.
Yeah, Legolas can shoot with blinding light. He can shoot into the combat with the Shadow Lord putting up the blinding light equivalent.
You mean like a Ladriel Lady of Light?
Or Lady of Light. And, it is just crazy. The only other thing to add with this as well, if you choose to shoot something that is mounted, you pick up or down. You don't roll. You just say to your opponent, oh, you see Tilda, one of Bard's kids, behind 17 other models? Mate, on a 2+, I've hit them. By the way, it's a 4+ to wound. Yeah, cool, because she's only defense 3 and I've got an elven bow. So take some fate rolls, please. Like, it's just crazy just being able to, like, control the board with a model that may not even do that ability because your opponent is so scared about losing the horse out from under Elendil or Boromir or any hero realistically that is paying.
Every Rohan hero.
They at least have Horse Lord,
Lords.
which helps, right? But forcing might off a Theoden early.
But it also means that the thing that means is that you're taking their might off wounding on 5s instead of 6s.
Yes.
Because you're shooting a horse instead of the armor
right?
model.
And so you're throwing Fate and probably Might at that to keep the horse. If you're throwing Fate, you're definitely throwing Might, basically, in my opinion, unless you roll like 1. But it just means that you're throwing so many of your opponent's resources into something that you get to do next turn.
And I think it's so abusive about it is you can just half move 2+.
Exactly.
Like, it's so hard. It's very hard to have any sort of counterplay against half move 2+.
I've played with Legolas a few times now, and the amount of times I've killed a 1 wound no fate left captain who has just hit combat and then just dies to a Legolas bow shot, and then I call a combat with a model next to the captain who then has a free line of sight into the back lines of the enemy's force or into banners or into even enemy leaders because I'm higher fight than them. Like, it is crazy the amount of power you can get out of this shot. And also, Legolas is the only other mounted model from memory.
Yes, there is no other mounted hero in the base list.
Exactly. Thranduil is the only other mounted model.
Yeah,
yes.
there is no one else. The captains can't take mounts and the Tauriel can't take mounts. So.
Exactly.
With that being said, let us get on to Tauriel, our next profile. So, for 85 points, you get a Elf Mirkwood Infantry Hero of Fortitude, with a move of 6, a fight of 6, a shoot of 3+, strength of 4, defense of 5, 3 attacks base,
Very nice.
2 wounds, courage 6, 3 might, 2 will, 3 fate, nice, solid. Armor, Elven Made Daggers, and Elven Cloak. Coming in with accuracy and strike, and she can bring a elf bow for 5 points. Not bad. You probably do want to bring the bow, because might with bows is good.
Yeah.
Woodland creature, and then her special rules. So, Blade Mistress. She has basically a very similar rule to Thranduil, where she gains additional attacks for each enemy model after the first, determined at the start of the fight, lasts until all strikes are resolved. Effectively, this makes her a 4-attack hero on the turns you charge. No one's ever going to put more models into her.
More or less, yeah.
Unless you've been spelled or something, in which case you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
But assuming no external circumstances like transfixes or being knocked prone, she's basically a 4-attack hero on your turns.
Yeah.
And that's not bad, not great,
Yes.
but...
The other thing about this rule, though, is if your opponent only puts 1 model into them, unless they're a defense 7 model, you could still call a combat.
Yes, it does make her like very, like a hedgehog kind of thing, where your opponent doesn't want to approach it, you know?
Yes.
And that's really nice to have. And then her other rule is Vengeful Fury. It is, if Killy, the Dwarf Champion of Erebor, is your army and is killed, Tauriel becomes Strength 5 and D4. I mean, it's a nice buff. I mean, I'd prefer Strength 5 to D5. It's not very... The issue is Killy and the dwarves and that I don't think is actually a great combo. And then
Although, with Erebor Reclaimed, there is some like reason to bring him along.
There is, but I think that you're much better off allying Lake Town or bringing other heroes from Erebor Reclaimed, like Thorin, because he's just the best hero in the game.
Yes. Like, bring a Thorin or a Dwalin if you want to discount him. Like, something like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that the issue is that Killy is like 4th on the list of heroes you bring from Erebor Reclaimed.
Yeah, and I think on the other side of the issue as well, if you're allying with Thranduil's Hall, Tauriel is the 3rd hero. Or 4th hero, probably, in the list.
Yeah. It's a great, cool rule to have if you want to bring them together. I just don't think it's very competitively important or relevant.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is it doesn't feel like you're paying for that rule in this profile. So it doesn't feel like you've been taxed an extra 5 points on a rule that will never come up.
No, she's very much pointed appropriately, I think. Like, especially if you compare her to the equivalent captain. She's like 10 points more, which +1 attack base, +1 might... She's actually probably undercosted compared to the captain, really. She's actually an excellent value proposition. The issue is she's going up against Legolas and Thranduil.
Yes, exactly.
and the profile we're about to talk about.
Yes. And let's jump straight into it, actually. Yeah, the Palace Guard Captain. So, the Palace Guard Captain is a very interesting profile. He's an elf, Mirkwood infantry hero, hero of fortitude. He's movement 6, fight 6, we'll come back to that. He's strength of 4, defense of 6, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage of 6. He has 2 might, 1 will, 1 fate. He has heavy armor, an elven made hand and a half sword. Heroic March is his heroic actions. So, He's your first much carry in the list so far. He's already phenomenal. Like, by default, he's already going to be in your list. But then, we get to talk about a couple more things. He has a shield as a war gear option. Cool, whatever. You buy it, it's awesome, it's great. Cool. Defense 7, Captain, awesome. He has 3 special rules. One of them is whatever. He's an elf, so he gets woodland creature. He then gets bodyguard, which, I know, you're probably going, Chris, this is an elf list. No one cares. Your courage 6.
I care, because you haven't seen my courage rolls.
The amount of times people go, oh, it's an elf list, they're never going to fail courage. I even had someone in an event once say to me, oh, mate, they're elves. Should I even roll my courage test when I break? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, I'm elves. I'm just not going to fail any.
It's still like a 30% chance to fail.
Yeah,
like,
so I told
1 in 3 will fail. Like, that's still nothing.
Yeah, I told him to roll them all out, and he ended up failing on a captain.
If only he had bodyguard.
Exactly, right? But, like, genuinely, it didn't lead to any more elves fleeing, but it meant that that captain that rolled ended up being off the table and not stand fasting for nearby models. Having any hero with bodyguard, no matter what the courage value attached to that model is...
Especially on captains, because captains only have 1 will. It's very...
Exactly.
And you're probably going to be spending your might early, and so... The Snake Eyes is always... It's a 1 in 36. Like, it's going to happen... If you have, like, a 6-game event, it's probably going to happen once. So you want to have the reliability of just saying, yeah, my 80-point hero is never going to flee.
Exactly. And additionally to that, he has 1 more special rule. It's a passive special rule, which is called King's Guard. Whilst within 3 inches of Thranduil, the King of the Woodland Realms, this model receives a bonus of +1 to their fight value. Which, like, I mean, it's there. It's there on the slide. Is this the best captain in the game?
He's tied with the High Elf Captain, probably.
Yeah.
High Elf Captain on Horsefoot Lands is probably the only equivalent, like, power level. Because this captain will not put out as much damage as that captain, but fight 7 roadblock with +1 to wound.
He's got +1 to wound still. He still hits hard.
He'll still do, yeah, but he doesn't have the dice or the knockdown, so he's not going to quite output the same damage. Like, he can't reliably take out 2 models in a turn.
No, definitely not. No.
Because he's probably, at best, he's probably 2 dice on 4s, you know, so he's probably going to kill 1, and then his spear will probably kill the other if he's got +1 to wound. But he can't just be like, I'm going to just go into 2 guys and just guarantee kill them. Yeah, call combat. Yeah, you can't do the aggressive combats you can with some captains. But fight 7 roadblock, you know, ability to shield, bodyguard, like all of that combined just puts him like up at that top echelon of captain models.
Yes. You are in such a horrific minority of the game at fight 7 threshold that you force almost every enemy leader in the game to strike against a captain.
It's literally Glorfindel tier heroes that match you.
Yes.
Like Glorfindel, Elendil, Bolgazog is like the fight 7 bracket.
Yeah.
Aragorn's fight 6.
Exactly.
Aragorn's fight 6. Boromir with the banners fight 7, and that's like it. And then you've got like, you know, like Gil-galad and then like big monsters.
Exactly. And if you push this captain into one of those, any hero that's like a smaller tier than you, in terms of that fight value bracket, right? Your defense 7, unless it's a strength 5 hero, they're calling a strike to probably not do a wound to you. Like, that is horrifically feels bad.
But even better, like, if they're like fight 4, it's like a 50-50 to even just be the same fight as you.
And then you win on a 33%.
And then you've got Elven Maid, yes, you've got Elven Maid.
Like, it's crazy, right? Like, having so much power packed into this model. And yes, I know, 3 inches of Thranduil, you're probably going, you guys are idiots, it's only 3 inches, that's so useless. But, like, think about it like this, right? When you're playing Thranduil aggressively in the front of your list, and you have a Palace Guard captain sitting 2 models away from Thranduil, putting down the pressure with fight 7, fighting right next to your fight 7 4 dice Thranduil, sometimes 5 dice Thranduil, no one's going to go near those 2 models unless they're going for a coup de grace. And how can they go for a coup de grace on Thranduil with the Palace Guard captain so close by to call combat?
Yeah, it just plays in how you want to play the list. Like, one of the ways you can play the list, which is you just ball up and you just go +1 to wound, and you just ram them. And, like, it's something that's very difficult to deal with, and the captain just plays really well into that. Even if he's not within 3 inches of Thranduil, he's still an excellent profile for 80 points. Like, he's D7, he's got fight 6 base, he's got bodyguard. Like, you don't have to just change, like, depending on what you're playing is, you can just have him off on his own.
That's the thing, right?
You know, in certain games, you want to just chain him to Thranduil and just go fight 7 goes. But in a lot of games, in most of my games at Clash, he just like went off on his own and a little thing of his own, and then eventually at some point when he's needed, he just hops back in within range of Thranduil, uses his fight 7 to push damage or to call combats or to just beat up on captains.
Yeah. I think as long as you keep him within heroic move range of Thranduil, you're probably playing this captain right. Obviously, there'll be the scenario or two where you want to separate or have to separate even. But I think if you're doing something more or less along the lines of keep him within 6 inches of your Thranduil, you're going to have a terrifying 1-2 punch sitting in the middle of a very punchy elf list.
Yeah, he's just very consistently impactful, basically.
Yes, essentially.
And he can turn for +2 to wound. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and on that as well, like, why do people always say that elves can't wound anything? They're literally one of the only armies in the game with their entire army built in, hand and a half. Like, people just need to be brave and use two-hand on fights that are in their favor. But regardless...
And on that bombshell,
yes,
it's time for the next profile.
Exactly.
The Mirkwood Captain, March Carrier. I think he's just bad. Unfortunately,
he's so close to being as good.
The problem here is that the Palace Guard Captain profile costs 5 points more and is objectively better.
Yes.
Not objectively. So let's talk about the Elven Made Glaive because he's the first profile we have with it. It's a unique piece of war gear that comes only for Thranduil's Halls. It is the following. It is a Elven Made weapon. It is either a spear or a hand and a half sword. Additionally, you can shield with it.
Yeah.
So what this means is you can shield with Elven Made. That's the big up on it. But like, let's compare, like the Palace Guard Captain and the Mirkwood Captain are identical in stats, except that with the shield, the Captain costs 5 points more and his opponent defense higher. He can still shield, the same as the Captain can, but just not at Elven Made. But even just ignoring the King's Guard rule, he just has Bodyguard built in.
Yes.
And like, that is so totally worth the 5 extra points.
Yes.
And then you add on top of that the fact that you can be fight 7, and you're just like, why would I ever bring the Captain of Mirkwood?
You know what I think? The Captain of Mirkwood should have been given heavy armor, Elven Made Glaive, and
a shield.
A bow.
Or a bow.
Built into the profile at 75 points, and then I'd see the argument for it.
Yes. Well, I'm confused why he can't be mounted like the Knights can.
Yeah.
Like, what I think this profile could do with, and would make it great, is give him a mounted option and then give him the King's Knights rule that the Mirkwood Cavalry have, which we'll talk about later, which makes Thranduil a banner from within 6 while he is mounted. Yeah. And then maybe up his points by 5. Make him 80 points the same, based on, foot, and then or maybe make it a 15-point mount. Like, add a shield and...
Give him an...
Actually, you can bundle the shield into his mount option, so it's a 15-point upgrade.
Yeah.
There you go. So that you have to pay a little bit more to get that access to that. And then I think it'd be a really cool choice, which you bring. But as it is right now, I just think the Palace Guard Captain is just the obvious... You would never bring a Mirkwood Captain for any reason.
I think he's very close to being the black sheep of this army.
If
very
only.
Close.
Chris, you want to take it away with our next profile?
Yeah, so let's jump straight into the worst captain in the entire game, right? And anyway, moving on from this. Let's move straight on.
Yeah, we should talk about the most upsetting profile I've read in a while.
Okay, so... The Mirkwood Ranger Captain. So he's 75 points, which means he's...
Thank you.
What?
She.
She.
It's a female model.
Or he. Either one. Yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's 75 points, right? Same price as the other two captains. Okay? You're expecting some very good stuff to come out of this model, right? So let's go to our war gear, right? Actually, let's go to our stats first, because that's the first upsetting thing, right? Okay. Your movement 6. Your fight is 6, which is at least you're an elf captain. That's cool. 3 plus shoot value. It's going to be very handy. Your strength is 4. Your defense is 4. Your defense is 4.
You don't have armor. You're a ranger.
But you cost 75 points.
Yeah.
Okay, there must be cool stuff coming up. Okay, they're 2 attacks. They're 2 wounds. They're code 6. They're 2 might, 1 will, 1 fate. Okay, cool. Interesting. I don't know why it's 75 points yet, but there must be something cool for it. You then get an elven bow, elven made daggers, so you can't even two-hand on this one, and you get an elven cloak. Okay, cool.
Elven cloak is good.
Yeah, the elven cloak is phenomenal. The other two is average, right? So you then go to your heroics, where he obviously has Oh, wait, he doesn't have March. The only captain in the game, as far as I'm aware, that doesn't have March. He gets accuracy instead, which is going to really help you.
Yeah, because you have no other characters with accuracy in this army list, so it's really nice utility.
Exactly that,
because
right?
none of your named... all three of the named characters have accuracy.
Yeah, it's fine, right?
That's okay.
On the bright side, you have 2 special rules. One of them is Woodland Creature.
Yep.
That must be right 75 points. Woodland Creature is pretty good. And then you get Night Fighters, which is the same rule that Tauriel has, basically.
Not quite. It's a slightly worse version because there's a cap.
There is a cap on it, that is true.
But it's basically the same thing. You get bonus attacks for additional models after the first.
up to a maximum of 3. So if you're in combat with 4 models, you'll have, was it 5 attacks?
Yes.
But if you're in combat with 12 models, don't know how you'll do that, but if you were in combat with 12 models...
you can get into... Is it 5? You can get,
5, I think.
So in theory, you can miss out on one attack the Tauriel will get, but like, that's never going to happen.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen.
So, if this model had March...
It wouldn't be the worst captain in the game.
Essentially. But the fact that you're paying for a captain and not getting the utility March out of it means that the captain's struggling.
Like,
and then you have to pay the same price as the already, in our opinion, overcosted Mirkwood Captain, or 5 points more for arguably the best captain in the game.
Or 15 points more for kitted Tauriel, who gets +1 defense, +1 attack, +1 might, +2 fate, +1 will,
and
plus strike, and a better version of the Night Fighter's rule.
Yes.
For 15 points.
But this one has an Elven Cloak too, so that's pretty
So
cool.
does Tauriel.
No, but this one has an Elven Cloak. That's why it's 75 points. It's actually a really good profile now that I look at the Elven Cloak.
Yeah. So basically, someone said to me that this model doesn't have March, and I said, no, it's so stupid. Why would they do that? I came over to this profile, and I just exclaimed to Chris, you won't believe this. I found the worst captain in the game. And like, maybe in a different list, having accuracy would be cool, nice, neat. But Thranduil has it, Legolas has it, Tauriel has it.
Well, I think the actual problem is you're paying 75 points to get it.
Yeah, well... Like when you think about what's in the profile and what it's bringing, 70 points is probably where it should be. Like
I don't have an issue with paying 75 points for a profile
March
like
captain.
this.
Yes,
but my problem is I'm paying 75 points to expect it to do something different to my list.
yeah,
right?
because a captain needs to bring utility because named heroes are just better than captains in 99% of circumstances. So the captain has to do something that the named hero doesn't. And in this case, your named heroes already have accuracy, which is the only thing unique about this model. And Tauriel has the extra attacks, and so it's just pointless.
Yes, essentially. And I think the only time this model ever matters is in the Legendary Legion, basically. Which is a shame. I'd love to see models that are useful outside of Legendary Legions, but...
Well, this model is useful because it looks cool, so you can use it for your normal rangers, like I did.
That's true. Yes, you do your token ranger or 2 on your list, and you use this model for it because it's a stunning model, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's a bit how you going. But that's okay.
But moving on from the worst captain in the game to one of the best troops in the game, the Palace Guard. For 12 points, an Elf Mirkwood Infantry Warrior. Move of 6, fight of 5 base. We'll get into that. 3+ true, not that it matters. Strength 3, D5, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 5. They come with heavy armor and an elven made hand and a half sword. For options, they can bring a warhorn for 30, banner for 25, a shield and a spear, both for 1 point. Special rules, bodyguard. We're already talking about how good bodyguard is on heroes. It's also just really good on troops. Being able to just say, I pass a courage check with terror and stuff like that in the game. Very important.
Yes.
And then it gets better. So 12 points is quite a lot for this profile up until now. And in fact, even with this rule, it is still expensive. But within 3 of Thranduil, Palace Guard receive a +1 to their fight value. This means you can get fight 6 +1 to wound troops in your list. Very, very good.
Yes.
There are multiple ways to run them. I've just run them always shield spear. I think going to 14 points it gives them the staying power because they're just going to be a staying power unit because they have bodyguard. And so if you ever go into that late game with the break, you want the shield on them. And I think you're already spending so many points on them, you may as well just go all the way, spend the extra point. It's such a small percentage of the cost you're paying for them that it's just worth bringing because it might matter.
Yes. In saying that, though, I also see quite a few people bringing just spears or just shields on them as well. I do see the argument for the 13-point Palace Guard. I think if you're going to do that, the box comes with a pretty even split of them from
It comes with a lot, yeah. I think it comes with like 12-12, to be honest. I'm pretty sure.
It's something like that, yeah.
I didn't build any of my swords, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's either 12-12 or it's like 12-8. It's something like that. I don't remember if it's a 20 or 24
It is a
box.
20 because it's a box. But it is very good. It's kind of unfortunate that your elite troop that you only want maybe 10 of comes in a box of 20 and your mainline troop comes in a box of 12.
Which you want 2 or 3 boxes of,
Yes, it is unfortunate.
Yes.
But, I mean, it's realistically possible to convert Palace Guard into elves with a little bit of work.
Dang, took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah,
This is one of the best baseline elf profile silhouettes for conversion.
It is also just a great model, yes. I think the Palace Guard is probably my favorite elf model, ignoring the hat. I think the hat's kind of silly. But if you're converting them, that's the best thing about them. They're just a distinct headpiece. You just chop off the head, do a little bit of green stuff work, you switch the head around, and that's basically a different model.
Yeah.
Because you change the silhouette enough, and then you just give them swords, and it's especially if you bring only spears on your Palace Guard and then only swords for your conversions. Nice and easy to tell them apart.
Exactly.
And just maybe make a color scheme difference, and you could do that and just not have any, armored elves.
Yes. I've seen a couple of really excellent conversions where people do head swaps, shield swaps, and just a little bit of repositioning with some green stuff and that sort of stuff to make some Rivendell spearmen. And it genuinely looks excellent doing it like that. And I think it's a much cheaper solution converting them. And if you want less resin or just more variation in posing, because the resin is a lot less posable, unfortunately, you can very easily get that out of this profile. But on the profile itself, I think it's a very powerful profile. I want to talk very quickly about the Warhorn upgrade. So I know you and I disagree a little bit about Warhorns.
Okay. Where is this going?
Is there a points level where you think getting a Warhorn on elves would ever be worth it?
No. Unless you're... Okay, actually... Unless you know, for some reason, the exact, meta makeup and it's, all terror armies. But, to be honest, you have bodyguard on, half your army and you have so much shooting that it shouldn't really matter. The thing, let's think, why a Warhorn would matter for you. There's also... It's even got the courage value. The reality is most terror armies don't have great shooting unless they're very specific armies.
Yeah.
And so because you have shooting advantage, the terror army has to charge you. So really, the armies that need the Warhorn the most are the ones that don't have shooting and are low courage. You have great shooting and you're high courage. You don't need a Warhorn. That's my opinion. Maybe if you're playing 1,500 points, okay, at this point, it's fine. If you hit 1,500 points for whatever reason, okay, just bring up Warhorn and lay him prone, Okay, great. But you'd have to be playing absurd level of points for the Warhorn to be the most useful thing you can add to your list. Even at, let's say, 1,000. My 850 list roughly is Legolas, a captain, and Thranduil with the Pajama King kit, which we'll talk about later. He's 160 points. And looking at my list there, I go, is the Warhorn the most useful thing I can add? And the answer is no, because I can add Bilbo from Lake Town. Or I could add Tauriel for another strong combat hero. Or I could add I could even just bring, a bunch more Palace Guard to have a ton of bodyguard in my list if I was that worried about terror. I would rather just have the extra bodyguard than have a Warhorn. You could upgrade 15 or you could upgrade 12 to 15-ish elves from armored elves to Palace Guard with shields.
Mm.
And that's the same points as a Warhorn. And I would rather just do that than bring a Warhorn. All of those, I think, are better approaches than bringing a Warhorn model.
Interesting. Okay.
I just don't think it adds anything to the... it doesn't change the things that matter.
Yes.
Because, again, like I said, you can bring more tools that have higher impact instead of the Warhorn.
Yes. I always feel like the Warhorn on a lot of good armies feels very, tokenistic. I'll just chuck it in because all the evil armies have to have one in there. So I guess we may as well give the good armies them as well.
Well, we talked about this. The way I see it is... okay, let's talk about a little bit about breakpoints and courage checks. The most important jumps are 2 to 3 and 3 to 4.
Yes.
5 to 6, basically with every jump after you go from 2 to 3, you get less value because the percentage of rolling the number you can...
And 3 to 4.
3 to 4 is still smaller than 2 to 3 because 7 is the most common outcome. So you get, by making 7 a success instead of a fail, you get the largest number of successes. And then 3 to 4 is also a very large percentage jump because...
I think 3 to 4 is equally big because of Harbinger stuff.
Well, but then you go, instead of going from... it still means because 1 to 2 is still a big one. But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Those are the two most important ones. After you do that, you have diminishing returns. Once you're already at Courage 5, you're already getting really big diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Outside of the Legendary Legion Black Riders. That's the only one where it's not.
Yeah.
And then the way I like to think about it is if you're in those situations where you have orcs going from 2 to 3, if you're gaining 30 points of courage for 30 points, that's pretty good value. Because essentially, compared to a Gondor warrior, you've spent 1 less point per each orc and have 1 less point of courage. By spending those 30 points, you've now essentially added a point to each orc that has gained a courage value.
Yes.
So once you hit 40, 50 models, it effectively becomes better value than the equivalent of just having high courage base.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the higher your model count, the more valuable the Warhorn is. If you have a 60 model army, your Warhorn is essentially 60 points.
Yes.
Now, it's not always going to be 60 points because you might not have to take courage checks. So but at worst, at that point, it'll be 30 points because once you've broken, you have half your army left and then you're taking courage checks and so on and so on.
Yes.
That's the other reason the Warhorn is sort of an upgrade I don't necessarily like is because in a lot of games, in let's say half your games, it might not even do anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes me feel really sad about this Warhorn upgrade. I understand why it's 30 points, but especially in this list, it feels like it's just taunting you.
All elves. But
Yes, an elf list with this much bodyguard.
Yes.
Why is it even in the list?
Yes.
It's just there to laugh at you, basically, and I hate it. But that's okay.
Yes.
Let's move on to something a little bit more productive, Harry.
Hey, look, it's the same elf profile every army has. Go ahead.
Oh wow, yeah.
Actually, it's not. It's got one unique thing.
Yeah, this one has the glaives in it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
But the Mirkwood Elf, you get an elf, Mirkwood Infantry Warrior. 9 points for the privilege, pretty bog standard. Movement 6, fight of 5, 3+ shoot value, strength of 3, defense of 5, 1 attack, 1 wound, and courage of 5. You have heavy armor, elven maid, hand and a half sword. That's right, you can two-hand with this guy. People just do it. Anyway, you get banners for 25 points, which is lovely to have, especially on an elf list. Higher fight means more consistency out of winning fights through banners, which means you stay alive longer, which means you can two-hand more often. You have elf bows for two... Why are you laughing? You have elf
You're
bows.
in a warpath today. You really decided to take this grudge you have against elf players fast.
It's fine. You have elf bows for 2 points. They are fantastic. They're strength 3. You have elven made glaives. This is the spear rule and the shielding rule built in. It is elven made, which means both of them happen at elven made. I think that's half the reason why it is 2 points, but it's still very nice to have. And you can buy shields as well if you don't want to buy the spear equivalents. They're 1 point. And you have the woodland creature special rule. What sort of percentage of an army usually, I guess, is made up of the Mirkwood Elf?
Probably about 60 to 70%. Let's say that. Okay, it also depends on your points. The higher points you go, the higher percentage they become. I think you want about 8 to 12 palace, or 6 to 12 palace guard depending on your point level, because you kind of want to fill out the space around Thranduil with them.
Yeah, I think like 8 to 10 is probably what you should be bringing.
Around 750, 8 to 10, around like 850 to 1k, you can go to like 12, 14, because then the game's going to go long enough that you might have more use for them.
Yes.
But yeah, effectively about maybe like 8 spears of, and if you're looking at 30 model war army, you're going to have 6 to 8 palace guard, and you're going to have like 14 of these guys, and then you're going to have like
a couple of cav.
2-3 cav, a sentinel, a token ranger.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 rangers. So they make up a big chunk of your army, and they have also a lot of different ways they can be brought. I think the 2 primary ways you bring them is either just a shield or bow and glaive. You can also just bring just bow. I would not bring just glaive very often.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it such a tricky profile, and it's why I see so many people do the spear only on the palace guard, so that they can bring shield only on these guys and try to do the 1-2 ranks like that. I understand the idea of it. I think I'd still put shields on almost every defense 5 elf in the list.
The way I see it is if you bring, let's say, again, like a 30 to 30, let's say we bring 30 foot troops.
Yeah.
Is you need about 15 spears.
Yeah.
If you have 30 models, you can bring 10 bows.
Yep.
So you can bring, like, let's say 8 of those as bow glaives, and you bring another 6 spear shield palace guard, and you filled out all the spears you need.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to do it as well. Yeah.
I generally play to be about 50% of my army has spears, or 50% of my infantry has spears. And I think that's a pretty good guideline here too, and it works out nicely with, 8 bows, 6 spears, that's like 4, so 6 palace guards, a spear shield, that's 14 spears, and that's probably half your list. And then you can, if you want to go to like 8 palace guard, and then, a couple more bow glaives.
You have flexibility.
Yeah, you do.
And I think that's what makes it nice.
The thing that's rough, but also probably for the best, is that you can't just bring spear elves, because if you could bring Mirkwood spear elves with spear shield, that would be very, very good synergy with Lake Town. And honestly, I honestly think that would actually make I think the Lake Town Thranduil alliance is one of the best green alliances in the game. And if you could bring shield spear elves, that would be so insane, because it's not that many points, but across, let's say we have 15 elves. I want to bring 15 spear elves with Legolas into my Lake Town alliance.
Yeah.
I'm spending an extra 15 points to make them glaives instead of just being generic spears, and I'm probably not getting that much advantage out of it.
Yeah.
And those 15 points could be, 2 extra Lake Towners and a couple extra upgrades, and that's not that massive, but it is like a little extra tax you have to pay to bring this alliance.
Yeah.
And it's probably for the best, because otherwise it would probably be just ridiculous.
Yes. I think the best way to look at it is every 10 elves you pay for the glaive on, you could have just put an elf with a shield as well.
Yes.
For that tax, basically. 10 elves with glaive and shield is, 120 points? Compared to any other elven list, a spear shield is 110 points. So you're
And
literally getting one less elf for the privilege.
And it's interesting as a comparison because if you look at the Wood Elf Spear in Lothlorien, it's a 1-point spear that can shield. So you are genuinely paying in the glaive for the Elven Maid. You're only paying for the Elven Maid.
Can the glaive two-hand?
Well, it's a hand and a half weapon. You have a hand and a half weapon base anyway.
I was just curious, yeah, because I knew the captain had the glaive as its only war gear option. So
Yes. I thought he couldn't turn, and then I was like, oh wait, it's a hand and a half weapon.
Okay.
But it literally only matters on the captain.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just an elf profile with +1 to wound, but neither in Thranduil. That's the important part.
Yes, and that's what turns this profile to weird one because you're paying 2 points for your spear. To this still fits really well into your burn style. I'm just gonna mow.
Well, yeah, like I said, you pay a little bit extra. You maybe lose an elf across your list, but it's not that big a deal because the rest of your list is so strong. It's honestly the sort of Thranduil tax is kind of, I think, mostly on the Palace Guard. Like realistically, I feel like it's a 13-point profile that's made 14 points by the +1 to wound effectively.
Yeah,
and that's how I like to think about it. Like you need to look at that Palace Guard profile like it's always next to Thranduil. And that's how you should think about it when you're building your list.
Yes, I think so, exactly. I still think you should bring, if you bring like 3 warbands, I think if you have 10 Palace Guard, I think you do 6 or 7 in his warband, and then you do 1 or 2 in the other warbands and just kind of sprinkle them out, just in case you need that bodyguard somewhere.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, obviously,
more or less you want to doom stack it.
Majority of the Palace Guard should be with Thranduil because that's where they need to be actually worth their points, and then the rest of the elves play the rest of the field.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's everything we need to talk about with this model. Let's move straight into the Mirkwood Cavalry.
This is probably one of my favorite models in the game, to be honest. Let's get started. Mirkwood Cavalry, 16 points. Elf, Mirkwood Cavalry Warrior, movement 6, fight of 5, strength of 3, defense of 5, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 5. Heavy armor, Elven Maid, hand and a half sword, and horse. Can bring a banner and a shield. Comes with expert rider and woodland creature. Okay, pretty solid. King's Knight, while mounted, Mirkwood Cavalry count as being in range of a banner if they are within 6 of Thranduil, King of the Wooden Realm. I love this rule.
Yes.
Oh my god, I cannot talk about how... this rule. It makes this model so good at expanding your effective combat range. So, like, I really like playing these guys around 5 inches away from Thranduil.
Yeah.
And just abusing that to get essentially like 3 extra models, 6 extra dice effectively of combat value.
Yeah.
I ran like 3 to 4 of them in my list when I was at Clash. And I ran 3. And what this list, like what these guys let you do is they, your banner is your doom stack, but you still have models in banner effect playing with that fight 5, with that huge chance to win fights off on the flanks.
Yes.
Which is something you can't always. And sure, they don't have lances, they're not strength 4, they're not the killiest cavalry in the game, but they're only 17 points.
Man, if I never had hand and a half.
And they're hand and a half, so if you really need to kill something, you can use it. I think the cavalry are the one I wouldn't use hand and a half on because it's such a big point.
If you're charging, it's 2 dice instead of the 1 on the guy next to it.
Yeah, and both your dice are got -1. You can't have like 1 dice at normal, 1 at -1. There's a much bigger downside to two-handing on them. And then if you really need them to be killy, or even actually what you can do is you can have your banner be offset so that they can charge next to Thranduil within 3 inches of him. Be your banner playing the sort of, let's say that they're on your Thranduil's in the middle. You put your banner on the right flank, and then next to Thranduil you have 2 cap charge on the left flank.
Yes.
And they make like a hold on your left flank, and they can have the banner and the +1 while your banner is helping you win the right flank.
Yes.
You can just do so much thanks to this rule. It just makes them so much. Like the closest comparison really are like, I mean, if you compare to the other elf cavalry, Rivendell Knights are 5 points more expensive kit. They're 22 fully kitted, right?
I think 21 or 22.
And they have the lance and the banner, and it's a big up on the cost, but they are really high impact, and they have the range threat. But for this model does something that they don't. And then the other one is obviously the Lothlorien Cavalry, who are similar in damage up, but have a bow and fleet foot.
I was going to say, they pay 1 point for the fleet foot, 1 point for the heavy armored horse, and they suddenly become a little bit too expensive for what you want.
But for 17 points at fight 5 with this, like without this banner effect, they'd be okay. You'd bring a few because you want to bring some cap.
Yeah.
But with this effect, you're like, I want to bring a few. Oh, they're so good. They just give you so much. It's just the strategic implications that they let you do, and the way you can play with them because they have this extra security on this banner. It's just so good.
Yes. I think the way I look at this profile is I think it's one of the best training wheels cavalry models in the game. Because it incentivizes you to try and find angles where your cavalry are getting behind your opponent's line to still be in that Thranduil 6-inch bubble of banner effects, which means you're trying to push onto the flanks. You're trying to then use them to wrap after you get some good traps. Maybe you have a Legolas to slingshot a combat through the enemy's backline. Maybe you have even just over 4 turns of combat. Your elves, you're going to do some grinding, and your grind in the middle of the list is going to be punching a hole. You then bring your cav out from reserve on that 4th turn, run through the middle, snag up a banner, someone taps into a cav, into a non-mounted hero, forces them to call a defensive something. Sometimes it might even be a strike because they're too scared about being tied fight with an elf. Like, there was a lot of power you can get out of this profile because of that banner. And being able to literally, like, in some cases, your banner, like you said, your banner can be on one side of your list, and you can snap another 6 inches away, or 9 inches away even, from your banner itself. Banner effects happening that your opponent didn't think about.
And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about how much extra you can get out of these models. Because of all these little rules that if you just get in the right spot with the right model, you get so much extra.
Yes.
And you're paying a little bit for it, but compared to how much you can get if you do it right, it's so worth it.
I mean, even if you say it's a 2-point tax, which it's definitely not. Even if you say it's
about a point. It's about a point, probably.
Like, it's... I'm sorry, but like...
it's excellent still, yeah.
Winning fights is worth 5 points to me. Like, it's just so good. Especially
so 17-point Fountain Court Guard or whatever, the Galadrim Court Guard?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's word for what I'm saying, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
So hear me, Jay, 17 points on those stupid pikemen.
Jay doesn't listen to this. Someone else tells him.
Yeah. But so I love Mirkwood Cavalry. They're just one of my favorite profiles in the game, to be honest.
Exactly. Alrighty, shall we jump into our last couple of profiles?
Yeah, we got the Mirkwood Ranger. Take it away, Chris.
Yes. So the Mirkwood Ranger is a steep 14 points. They're an elf, Mirkwood Infantry Warrior. They are movement 6. They're fight 5, 3+ shoot. They are strength of 3, only defense 3, 1 attack, 1 wound, and courage 5. They have an elf bow, elven made daggers, and an elven cloak. Now, they have access to only a warhorn as their upgrade. So, in other words, they're always 14 points. And they have the woodland creature. And they also have access to knife fighters, which is the same rule that the Ranger Captain has. So, up to a maximum of 3. After the first model you engage with, you gain extra attacks. So, these models, if you charge into 2 enemy models, are 2 attack profiles. If you then get countercharged by 2 other models, they're 4 attacks per Mirkwood Ranger, which makes fighting rangers really, really, really spooky if they're charging into you and getting those fights how they want it. And they feel like absolute garbage the rest of the time because you're paying 14 points for that.
How many points is a wood elf with a bow? 10?
Yeah.
You're paying, effectively, 4 points for knife fighters.
Yeah, because otherwise they are...
Identical.
No, the elf, the Lothlorien elf has hand and half, I think.
So you're paying 4 points for knife fighters.
Yeah.
That's the thing that... I mean, yeah. This profile costs too many points.
I think you also have to say that this profile is probably paying 1 point to be not counted towards bow limit. So even if you say 3
But I mean, but then you have to say, oh yeah, but your Lothlorien elves have magic resist, which is also a really powerful
that's the other
rule,
thing, right? Yeah.
But even if we take that into account, that's still an extra 3 points compared to get knife fighters, and knife fighters is not a 3-point rule.
No, maybe 2 points. I could see 2 points.
The problem with me saying it's an interesting rule. It's a very powerful rule in like a perfect world scenario, but you're also a D3 strength 3 elf who can't get +1 to wound, and you just...
Tell you what this rule is good at, actually. I think this is an excellent rule to bully newer players at the game.
Yeah, it's a skill check rule.
Who want to doomstack into Rangers because they go, it defense 3. And I think if people fall for that trick, or that bait, or whatever you want to call it, or even I've seen people like doomstack into one of them to then call a combat, and then realize they're fighting a 4 attack
and they
model.
get blended. And
yeah,
like, oh,
and then suddenly that cab model lost its horse.
Yeah,
I've seen that before, and I'm like, sometimes it happens.
It is
right?
a potentially scary model, but I just don't. And obviously, there's a Legion. If you're going to play them, you're going to play the Legion. And but then the problem with the Legion is you don't have March and a kiting shooting army, and
or banners.
Or banners. So to be honest, actually, Legion is just... What do you even get in the Legion? You just get the ward save if you touch a tree?
Ward save if you touch a tree, and Sentinels don't count to the bow limit either.
Okay, so you just don't play the Legion.
More
to be honest, the Legion, you're probably better off playing non-Legion so you can bring a captain for March, and then just going all ranges.
Yes. Well, I think you bring a captain and like 3 cav, like 2 cav.
Yeah,
just
like-
so you can bring another Sentinel. I think that's probably the way you actually do it. But regardless.
But yeah, exactly. Like it almost feels like Legion actually isn't the right way to play this list, because the best thing about it is you have infinite bows with kiting ability, and you can't kite when you don't have March, or at least not as effectively.
Yes, not in the way that you should.
If only there was a captain profile in this list with March, but no, we have accuracy for some. See what I mean? Like this, the Mirkwood Ranger captain makes no sense.
Tell you what would be sick if the Legendary Legion gave the captain March.
That would, or Legolas even.
No, just the captain.
Or even Tauriel. Like,
Legolas would be too good if you gave him March. 2 up, 4.5 inch.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Someone else can call his March for him anyway.
No. No, they don't, because they don't have much.
Anyway, basically, too many points. No good.
Yes,
Sorry.
more
I
or
bring
less.
one in my list because I like the captain model and I want to use it, and that's about it.
Genuinely.
Okay, I do think. Sorry, I will. Let's be genuine. I agree. I think bringing 1 or 2, mostly to just bully people with Elven Cloak. Bull. You know, like you'd like. Reality, like if you bring 2 of them, or like one of them, a Sentinel and Thranduil, and they just sit with Elven Cloaks and just say, "I'm going to shoot you until you move into me," just to get a few like free shots with no counterplay. Good.
Or even better than that, like I think the people that use them best are the people that sit them as their objective grab.
Yes, they
Because the Elven Cloak means they're untouchable, and that incentivizes people to send more than one model, just in case the one model gets picked off by the bow, and suddenly you can get the 2-on-1
Yeah,
fight.
I agree. The elf it's a good model to objective hold because of that too. But to some extent, though, you could also argue that a shield elf or a glaive bow elf would be better because you can just shield. So even if
Win the fight more and hope that your coach 5 lasts longer than their coach 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
like there's a lot of like you could just argue that a bow glaive elf is better. Because if one cav model comes at you or something, or like if your opponent spreads out so you can't charge 2-on-1 and it goes one at a time at you, your knife fighter D3 guy is just useless.
Yes. You have
Whereas
a
a glaive-
54% chance to win the fight
Whereas
and
a-
a 50% to die.
Yeah, whereas a glaive elf can just still has the bow for shooting, has a higher defense, so he's less likely to die when he fights, and can just shield. So you
Yes.
always have 2 dice.
He's just better.
Yeah, so that's the problem with that. In my opinion, I think the best use of them is abusing Elven Cloaks for a few free shots, and then maybe getting them for like a 2 attack, and then putting like a spear behind them.
Yes.
And
However, that being said, that is only 1 point less than the Mirkwood Ranger. And so the defensive stat of the Elven Cloak might actually overcome the 1 point gap. It's a debate.
But I think in if you look at the totality of circumstances that are possible, in more cases the defense 5 and always being able to shield will be more impactful than the Elven Cloak and 2 attacks maybe. But I think if you ever get 2 attacks and when someone's trying to grab objectives off you, they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
They can just spread apart, and now you can never do that.
Yes.
So I think in the majority of situations, the 1 point cheaper elf will also just be better.
Yes.
In fringe situations, like you can, for example, if you have like a really well placed fence and he has a cav model, you can just sit there in the fence and be invisible, so he has to walk within 6 inches of you and stuff like that. Like you can have edge cases where the ranger is better, but in the majority of cases, normal will be better. And also, the next profile also can do this really well.
Yes. I think the next profile probably does it better than both of those combined.
Yes.
The
Wood Elf Sentinel. We talked about this guy before, and let's talk about him again. For 25 points, you get an Elf Warrior Mirkwood, Infantry Warrior. Move 6, Fight 5, 3+ Shoot. Strength 3, Defense 3, 2 attacks. Always 1 wound, Courage 5. Comes with an Elven Made Sword, Elf Bow, and Elven Cloak. Woodland Creature as well.
Yeah.
In it, then, they are also a spellcaster, effectively. Not quite in a normal way, they're just a better spellcaster, because their spells go off automatically and you can cast them every time without spending will. Basically, a Sentinel may sing 1 song each turn, provided they're not engaged in combat. These function exactly like magical powers, and they are automatically cast and cannot be resisted. 3 spells are the Helm of Elbereth. This song passes raises the courage of a target model and makes them automatically pass courage tests for the remainder of the turn. So, oh no, I ran out of bodyguard guys to throw at Terra. Let me just auto pass on any model I want.
Yes.
Or on like a hero, let's say you're being like drained courage for some reason. Thranduil's been drained courage to courage 1. Oh no. Make him auto pass courage.
Yeah.
Your second spell is Eldamar, some elven.
Eldamar Madrigal.
Thanks. A ranged 12 spell as well. The target enemy model must immediately take a courage test. If the test is passed, nothing happens. If the test is failed, the target model falls under the control of the opposing player, who may then move it up to its maximum move, even if it's already moved. Basically, you get to cast Compel. Not quite as good because it doesn't have the transfixed effect at the end.
But you move it twice as fast.
But you get to move it full movement, and you get to cast it every turn, and you have no limit how many times you can cast it. Excellent. Amazing. This is why you bring this model. The other spells are also decent, but this is the main thing that makes this model excellent. And then the last is the Lay of Gondolian. Basically, the Sentinel can sing the song and they gain terror on themselves. Yes. Again, that's pretty good. As we were talking about, this objective holder Majiggy play. If it's a low courage model, you make them walk away. And then if they get too close and there's like multiple of them, you just make yourself terror.
Yes.
You can always shoot your bow at them. You have the Elven Cloak for safety, and you always have 2 attacks.
Yeah.
It is a lot of points. It is 11 more points than the Ranger. But the thing with this model is, all it takes is one impactful courage check failed, and they've already paid their points.
Yes. I have been on the receiving end of, as well as been the one doing it to people as combats hit, as people start, turn 2 or 3 of the combats is when you do it to someone, and you just say, can your banner make a courage check? And they just instantly freak out because they know they fail. They're spending an entire turn without a banner.
Courage 3, Courage 4 banners fail half the time. Every second turn, your opponent doesn't have a banner.
Literally, yes. And then suddenly they're pulling off 3 models to do a little 3-point triangle, trapping them in, or they're doing a 2-point triangle and trapping them into the models fighting in the spear sport roles. And you can call combats, burn 4 models, and you're on top of the banner. Like, there was so many high threat things that change how a game can happen because a Sentinel does it once. And if you're fighting good versus evil matchups, especially, where the courage value of 3 is like...
3 is just common across everything that isn't elves and dwarves.
Well, a lot of men have 4 or ways to get to 4, and there are buffs that affect it.
3 or 4, but 3 or 4 is still 40 to 50% pass. It's not extremely high pass. It's not effectively you can expect every second turn a failed realistically.
Every third, unless you're... But either way, yes.
Second or third, but even then, it just depends. And let's even talk about more impactful things. I played a game where I moved a warg in front of Bolg and he couldn't charge for 2 turns because of it.
Yes, and that's where it becomes super clutch, is watching your opponent's plans change or even fall apart entirely because of something as simple as, I've even seen the Lay of Gondolin, the terror bubble, pop up before, and people run a Sentinel into a gap that, a couple of Warg Riders or... for me, it happened with 2 of my Haradrim Raiders. Couldn't actually pass that code check to charge the Sentinel, and thus I had this weird roadblock in the middle of my force. The way it was positioned, only 2 models could roll the code check, because everything else couldn't bloody see the model with the other cloak happening. And so I had 5 models that couldn't actually charge. One of them just happened to be a ring wraith that had just blown its venom bubble for the turn, and subsequently gave it to 2 models total. There were so many cheeky things you can do by forcing odd interactions, and the more odd the interaction, the more janky it feels or looks, the less likely your opponent has
an answer
to it. Exactly that. And forcing your opponent to make the choice, not you, is low-key probably one of the greatest abilities and show of ability in this game, I think. Forcing your opponent to be the one in the rock and the hard place, and you be the one, I'm happy with either outcome, as long as it's made my opponent think, or split their forces, or change what they otherwise wanted to do. And I think the Sentinel encapsulates that perfectly. Yes, they're 25 points. Yes, you probably don't want to ever bring more than 2 unless you're going above 850 or so.
Yeah, I think I always keep it at 1, even at 850, but I also... My list is very interesting. But anyway, yes, Sentinel's very good. I think auto bring 1 at basically every points level.
Yes.
And then they're just so useful. They just have so much utility. And don't do what I do, where you just randomly let them get shot for no reason because you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
I think I lost my Sentinel 3 out of 4 games for no reason. Because I just walked him out and was like, I didn't put a wall between us. Oh, he's dead.
My favourite ever thing you've done is you've just walked Thranduil, PJ Thranduil, forward.
You don't know how... I think I...
And then realised, in the middle of the opponent's shooting phase, being like, oh man, I'm really lucky that there's a wood between you and me.
No. During Clash, I swear there were 4 games where I walked Thranduil out, realised, oh no, he's going to get shot, and... almost died. And there was no reason for him to be in danger. I just forgot to check Elven Cloak. My first game of the day was Clash by Moonlight.
Oh no.
And there was it was the Great Beast of Gorgoroth doing a drive-by, and someone was like, I'm gonna tank it, and the bows were like, okay. And just pop all 3 fade off on turn 1.
That's a deal. The only thing that made me happier is if he got run over in turn 2.
He did. He went down to 1 wound.
Oh, even better.
Both wound rolls succeeded. He was on 1 wound, and then he called a heroic combat off it, ran behind a tree, and went prone, so the Ringwraith couldn't cast a spell on him.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
I remember the Elven Cloak after that. I was like, oh, it's okay. He can't spell me if I just go prone next to this tree.
You don't even need to go pro next to a tree.
I wanted to make sure.
It's fine. Anyway, the Sentinel is a good model.
Just don't play it badly like I do.
Above 300 points, I think, is when you should expect to see a Sentinel in pretty much any list. I think 300 and lower is when you're buying a banner instead of a Sentinel. And I think above 300, like 350, 400 and above, is when you can probably pay that 50 points for a banner somewhere in the list and a Sentinel. But again, it depends on a lot of things. How expensive is Thranduil? Are you doing a Thranduil list?
As we talked about, you have a lot of versatility with how you build this list.
Yeah. I think knowing when to slot one in is a tricky, conversation. I would probably say 400 is about where I would look to put a Sentinel into a list. But I may not actually put one until closer to 500, depending on what I want to do with the list.
I think you should, because the thing about it, when the spell goes off, it's such a high impact at lower points. Like, the lower the points level, the higher the impact of the spell going off can be as well. Like,
true.
And then, but yeah, generally I don't go above 1. Maybe at 850 I'd think about it, but even then, because the thing is, the targets that you want for it, like, I mean, you can get more sometimes, but also your opponent can be smart about it, and there's more tools at higher points you need to worry about, and there's other things you can bring, and there's a lot of considerations that come into it.
I mean, for my Lothlorien, I bring 2 at 850, and I think in the list I've written for that, it works really, really well.
I think the main difference is this list is spending more points on its heroes than you are.
I was going to say, yes. The Lothlorien list is a lot cheaper.
In every way. Everything's cheaper.
Pretty much, yes.
Literally every model's cheaper.
And so I'm bringing the Sentinel in part because I wanted the second Sentinel, but also in part because I was like, well, I have an extra
the points,
20 points and I'm at warband capacity. I may as well turn another model into a Sentinel and gain an extra 6 points for upgrades and other things.
Yeah.
Is essentially what I decided to do with that. So it depends a lot on how your list building is. I think in this list, 850... 750...
850 I think is where you look at too.
Yes. I think somewhere in that break
or
point.
lower, it's a bit tricky to find a spot.
I think also depends hugely on what else is in your list.
And how you keep Thranduil is a big part of it too.
Yeah. If you want pure elves without allies, I think then you probably want 2 Sentinels at 850 minimum. If you're going kind of mixed allies, contingents, hodgepodge,
Lake Town,
that sort of stuff, Battle 5 Army style listing.
Yeah.
Then you probably only need 1 because you have other tricks happening.
You have other tools,
Yeah. But it's a debate, right? But yeah, that is the last of our profiles.
So we're going to take a quick little break, right?
Yeah, very well-rounded roster. But yeah, we'll see you guys soon with allies and lists.
Alright guys, welcome back to the Dicebearers podcast. We're about to jump straight into our allies and lists. Chris, what are our allies?
Well, that's a question. You have, I think, 3 of the best green allies in the entire game. You have Iron Hills, so you have Dane, you have the pig who rides Dane. You have Survivors of Lake Town, which is phenomenal for the amount of cheap bodies you can bring to the table. And you have Erebor Reclaimed for every free heroic combat in the world, basically.
But you don't have Solodan, so it's not actually the 3 best allies in the game.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
It's second, third, fourth.
Yeah. Problem is, I genuinely agree with you, yeah.
Personally, I think Survivors of Lake Town is the best green ally to have in the game, except maybe Solodan. Depends on how you're building your list. But I think Survivors, genuinely, for both this list and Iron Hills, is just such a huge boon in how much variety it gives you and how it lets you choose how you want to spend your points. And it's just great.
Yes. How many points is Eldar?
The cheapest hero of Fortitude you can bring is 30 points.
30 points.
30 points to bring 12 warriors, a point of might, and a hero that can call moves. Obviously a very weak hero, but also one that's like, you don't care. It's 30 points.
Exactly. So you're paying 90 points for a full warband, is what you're telling me.
Roughly 90 to 100 points, depending on how you kit the warband.
that is crazy value when you're comparing it to the fact you bring fight 6 bodyguard elves.
Because that warband is going to be fight 5 or 6, yes. Yeah. Because what you're essentially doing is you're cheating the fight payment.
Yes.
You are essentially on every one of those Lake Towners spending 3 points less than you should be for the profile you're effectively getting.
Yeah.
Because every point of fight costs a point, and then they're fight 2 base, and so you basically got 8-point models for 5 points.
Yeah. It's insane how cheeky you can get with it. But outside of those green allies, you have yellow to...
Literally everything. It's just a yellow line. It's literally crazy. I was like, what?
And so I guess the question is yellow allies worth dropping the army bonus?
I've seen some interesting variants. The one I saw at Clash that I love is bring a eagle and then bring Army of Lake Town and then bring Legolas and elves. Basically, you bring it with... The list was Legolas and then a bunch of Lake Towners from Army of Lake Town with the Master, Alfred and Braga, and I think one Captain maybe, and then Guahir.
That's such a hodgepodge.
But the thing is,
love it.
Since you're not bringing Thranduil, you're not losing your army bonus.
Yes.
The army bonus in Army of Lake Town is nice, but not necessary because it's still a 6-inch.
6 to 12 inch?
It goes 6 to 12.
Yeah,
so
you don't care about that.
As long as you're playing it right, especially at like 650 points or less. Like if you're playing 650 points, you don't need a 12-inch banner.
No.
If you're playing correctly, especially when he doesn't have to be in combat, you can just position him purely for the banner effect.
Yeah.
And then Legolas brings you those elves. The Guahir is also just a really interesting choice in that list. I really loved it. I considered, and you can run a disgusting list like this. It's 650. You can bring like Legolas, a full warband of elves, and then like 40 Army of Lake Town guys. You can bring like 50, 60 models. And then like a 15 elf contingent, which effectively gives you 30 guys that are cheating up to that fight 5.
Yeah.
A 30 block of fight 5, and then a 30 block of fight 4 with the Master. And an insane number of shots. You can bring 20 bows and Legolas, an insane amount of might. It is a disgusting yellow alliance.
Yeah.
And because you're not losing it that much with the army bonuses, you don't care.
Yes.
How good is that?
I think armies like that. I've also seen a really interesting Rohan army. It was Theodred and Aemir allied into a Legolas allied contingent, basically. And so it was basically bringing the best of both worlds. So yeah, you were dropping bits and pieces out of the Rohan army list in terms of especially those charging models.
The plus strength was the big loss.
But you're not... Like, that army wasn't actually paying for many cab models at all, I don't think.
Was it going heavy on foot and then supporting it with elves?
It was super throwing spear heavy, basically, was the gimmick of the list.
That's really interesting, actually.
And so he brought 2 Valor heroes, the full 30 warriors with it, and I think he bought every single model that had a shield, had a throwing spear, basically. And he did a bunch of them, and he bought, I think it was 3 Outriders on horse, and like 4 Royal Guard, basically. Mm-hmm. And then the Legolas side of it was like 4 Sentinels, and a bunch of spear shields, and 1 single cab. And I was like, I can get behind this list.
That's a really interesting list.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch it. It didn't do amazingly, just because its counter matchup was a really, really brutal Mordor list that was really exploiting high...
it just walked in with high D6 model count and was like, nice throwing spears, lol.
The opposing model was running a Ringwraith. I think it was the Shadow Lord they were running. No. What's the one that brings the banner effect? The Dark Marshal. They bring the Dark Marshal along with a whole bunch of Black Numenoids as the front line. And then... that army is not killing that. Yes, the Rohan were cool with the throwing spears, but unfortunately it was just the wrong pits of defense sort of thing that matched up into them. The idea is awesome because it's just so much strength 3 shooting, but it just had an unfortunate matchup basically. But regardless, really cool idea.
That is actually super interesting.
There's a lot you can do with it. Like, I'm sure you can get some absolutely wacky alliances going.
Yeah, I will say if you're going yellow, you just drop Thranduil from the list essentially.
Yeah, more or less.
I don't know that he's worth bringing.
I think the Terror Bubble might be the only reason.
Yeah, but
it
feels really rough losing out on that. The bluster wound on him in that bubble.
Yes. How many points is Lady of Light?
Lady of Light is 130.
130. Oh, but she's not a Valor anymore.
She can't just get free allied into everything. No.
So I guess he's the new Lady of Light.
I don't think he does anything that Lady of Light does, but that's okay.
I mean, the Terror Bubble is nice to.
Lady of Light doesn't bring a Terror Bubble.
I mean, she brings basically terror with her everywhere, and the mini Harbinger.
She brings Harbinger. She doesn't.
It's probably the more important part. She herself has it, I think.
No, she doesn't have Aura of Dismay, I don't think.
No, she has terror herself though, right?
Yes, she has terror. Yes,
She has terror and brings the -1 to it, to people's spell roll, to courage rolls, which is I think really handy to have because you can use like a mini explosion basically as soon as people start breaking.
Yeah. It is a very powerful effect. Obviously, I just don't think they don't do the same thing.
No, I mean one is the blinding light bubble, the other is
Actually, here's a question: is if you're bringing Thranduil, you're basically paying for a like the thing is Círdan exists if you want to play like an elf bubble of spell like a Feyre, like, and you could just bring Círdan and like another hero and then ally that into another list, and it's probably better than bringing Thranduil for the Terror bubble.
Yes, I agree.
And he also brings like basically like if you're bringing him just cheapest 125 point Terror bubble machine, you're still paying 45 points more than Círdan, and Círdan also has a lot of other spell casting.
Although you don't need to babysit Thranduil as he walks around.
Well, I mean,
the world.
Círdan can just sit in your second rank, and he has terror, and he's
No. As in, like, Círdan needs a hero of valor babysitter.
Yes, you do need to bring a babysitter, or even a fortitude if you're going green. But
true, yeah.
But yes,
yeah.
the sort of general idea I think ends up working out better if you look at Círdan and doing that. But also at this point, you're playing like 1k if this is like something you're considering, like bringing either of these heroes and another hero to like bring your terror. Like this is just extreme high point, extreme.
Yeah. I think
luxury.
I want to see someone play around with like a Boromir of the White Tower list with Thranduil in it. I think that could be a really interesting army because you can bring your Shield Wall frontline along with like some very powerful buffs, and you can basically play 2 fight bubbles if you get separated and stuff. Like, it's interesting. Is it worth?
I feel like it's not worth it because the whole gimmick of Boromir is to bring fight 5.
Or even at that point, maybe bring a Lance Boromir.
Do you go Missile Boromir?
Yeah, you go full turbo Boromir.
Yeah, I think it could be some interesting combos there, and then just bring a bunch of fight 6 elves with Thranduil.
They would still be fight 6, wouldn't they?
Yeah, the fight bonus is part of Thranduil, not Thingo.
Okay, now we're talking.
You can bring like 6 or 8 Palace Guard spears, bring like 5-6 bow glaives, and then bring a frontline of Ministerius. You bring Lance Boromir as a missile.
Yeah, and 6 sentinels.
Moving on, let's talk about our first list. Pajama King. So this is a modified version of my Clash list, which is added 100 points to go to 750. So Thranduil, Crown, Elven Sword, Elf Bow for 160 points. 2 Mirkwood Cavalry with shields, 5 Mirkwood Elves with shields, 3 Mirkwood Elves with bow and glaive, 6 Palace Guard with spear and shield, 1 Palace Guard with banner and spear, and a Wood Elf Sentinel. A Palace Guard Captain with shield, 5 Elves with shield, 1 Cavalry with shield, 4 Elves with bow and glaive, 1 Mirkwood Elf with just a bow, and a Mirkwood Ranger. And then we're bringing Hilda Bianca from Survivors of Laketown with 7 warriors with shields and 4 with spear and bow, giving us 41 warriors, 3 heroes, 6 might, and 14 bow shots, ignoring Thranduil, which takes us to 15.
It's a cool list. I like it a lot. I agree. It is literally, this is like the Pajama King on Pajama Parade, right? It's very low defense on a lot of your big pieces outside of the Palace Guard Captain, I think.
Yeah, Hilda Bianca is also another PJ enjoyer.
Literally, like your entire front line basically is low defense.
Until you hit the
elves.
You have
right?
about 10. You have 10 shield elves and 7 shield lake towners. So you've got about a 50-50 mix of D5, D6.
But realistically, you want all those lake towners in front of the elves pretty much all the time.
Well, okay, the way I would play it, having thought about this, is you would have your core be Thranduil surrounded by all elves.
Just so you maximize
and then
that plus
one flank gets a mix of lake towners and elves.
Yeah.
And then you put your spear bows on the other flank behind a bunch more elves.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah. Because you want to exploit as much +1 to wound as you can.
Yes.
So your center wants to be the pure elf side. And at that point, it doesn't matter hugely where Hilda's warband goes, I don't think.
Hilda just spreads her models around and then maybe runs in to get +1 to wound for one turn.
Yeah, and I think
then dies.
Yeah, I think she
Actually,
hangs around.
if you put an elf behind her, she's not that bad. She'll be fight 5 with 1 attack.
Yeah, and she might give 3 or 4 of them, was it rerolls to wound?
+1 to wound
+1 to
within
wound.
3 for charging lake towners.
Yeah.
So you'll have like 3 or 4 lake towners at +1 to wound for maybe 1 or 2 turns. That's not that important. You're bringing her just to bring the models, and she's a 30-point of might.
I was going to say, at that point, you're paying 30 points for 13, or in this case, 12 models.
Yeah.
That still can do a clutch mid to late game move. You're really light on might, I think. Obviously, most of the hero armies are going to be 7 or 8 might points. So you seem a little bit light on the might, but you have a lot of warriors.
You have terror and you have bows, so you don't care about might.
Yeah, you almost want
That's the way I see it.
you want to lose a lot of your roll-ups.
Oh, yeah, you always want to go second on priority, because then you can just make them fail courage checks and then just take advantageous fights.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a cool list. I think I really like the idea of allying with Mirkwood, and I think all of our lists are allied in some.
No, the all cap.
No, you're right. Yeah. We have one that isn't. Yeah, but like it's just so easy to go green allies.
Well, here's what I'll say: is I think 750 is really awkward to go pure. Basically, when we talked about this during our list building video, and I suggest if you haven't watched that, it's a great video. I think from us, I think it's really good to sort of get into the head of how we list build. But for me, I hate empty warbands. And the problem with this list is that 650 is 2 perfectly filled warbands, and I love that. I think that's
850
excellent.
is 3 perfectly filled warbands.
Just about, yes. And then at 750, I can bring another hero and maybe 1 elf, maybe 2 if I bring like a captain.
Yeah.
And so at 750, going pure Thranduils just feels really against how I want to list build, which is why Hilda Bianca plus 11 guys is how I think ideally you want to take the list.
Yes.
Because, like, think about it. The difference here is you could bring Legolas, who is a way better hero, or you can bring another 11 bodies
to the table. Yes.
And that's like, I would always want those 11 bodies.
Yes, and I think regardless of how good or bad those bodies are, just lifting your bottle count by fully 10 is a big deal, I think. And especially if you play them correctly, with every single late towner dying after losing a fight 5 combat, it becomes really, really hard to actually shift this list.
Like we said, if you play it perfectly, you're basically getting an extra, like, 33 points for free.
Literally, yes. And I think that's the thing that makes this list so clutch, right? It's if you can position it well, and it's not even that hard to position well, to be completely honest. Like, if you can position your list where Thranduil and the middle of your list is burning, whilst one flank is surviving, and the other side of the list has 11 or 12 extra dudes that have fight 5 mixed throughout it, you're gonna be killing most lists pretty quickly. Outside of an elf mirror match, I think.
Maybe then you're going to kill the elves a lot faster than going to kill you.
Yeah, but depending which type.
It depends on the exact list,
yeah.
But you're also probably, like, if it's like another fight 6 elf list, you're probably going to be, especially if it's the Gilgalad variant, you're probably going to be outnumbering them, and off the outnumber you can start getting advantages.
Exactly.
And off the knock prone as well. Like, if it's, I think Lothlorien is probably the actual hardest matchup for this, because they can potentially resist your knockdown and also have fight 6 way more spread out.
And they can probably match you with 100% elf model keywords. They can probably match your model count.
And then you'll have to make use of your knock prone, hopefully, and your terror and your extra damage.
Yeah.
Your damage is what's going to have to try and tip the scales, essentially.
Basically, yes. Which
And
is very doable. Yeah, like, it's very, very doable.
Especially the high model count Lothlorien lists have a lot of D5 and D3, which you're going to wound on force 3s.
Exactly.
So if you ever get through the front line, you can annihilate them in like 1 or 2 turns.
Especially knowing that every single one of our listeners is going to be two-handing a lot of those fights as well. Because they know that elves can two-hand and aren't a wet noodle army.
Mutual two-hand pact.
It's not mutual, because if you have 3 dice in the fight, because you have
No. When we play the elf mirror match,
you always it's gentleman's agreement. You both two-hand fate no matter what. Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, let's get into this terror you brought upon us.
Yes,
Dad and Pig.
The dad and the pig. So you have Dane. Sorry, can you swap those around? Pig on Dane, and 12 Iron Hills warriors with spear and shield. You then got 6 Iron Hill warriors with just the crossbow upgrades, and then in Thranduil's warband, you bring Mr. Thran Daddy himself with a circlet, heavy armor, and horse. So, just quickly, this is a very different build of Thranduil himself compared to the last list, and it's going to be a very different build to the next list. We'll talk about it a bit later, but he's bringing 8 Palace Guard with spear and shield. One of them also carries a banner. You got 5 Mirkwood Elf Warriors with just a bow, so no glaives on these ones. I couldn't quite fit the points in for them. You got 3 Warriors with shield, and you got 1 Cavalry model with a shield as well. It brings you 6 points of might, 37 models, and 11 bows, with half of those bows being crossbows as well. So you have a very hard-hitting shooting list, with defense 8 standing in front of you, strength 4 on top of all that, and +1 to wound on the back rank. That is...
And you're a terror line.
Yeah, it's a terror line. You probably fight 6 along a bunch of it, and Thranduil can act as 2 things in this list. A buffer, a backline buffing piece that can kind of sit in the backline and, snake into the odd combat or 2 where there's a gap, or if you want to call a combat to then slingshot things around, you can definitely do that. But he doesn't need to do the lifting. You have the pig on a Dane to do that, basically.
Yeah, I like this, and I think let's talk more about the different builds. So the previous build is the 4 attack on foot, ram him into 2 guys every turn, and just go. He's so safe, you can't do anything to stop him killing.
Yes, unless you risk a strike off with him, which is not what you want with a 5 dice model.
Yes, because he's always going to be at least 4, probably 5 with the spear behind him. If you put anyone other than your hero, he's going to 6, and like you're just giving him so many dice. It's so hard to threaten him. Worst comes to worst, oh no, you ram 2 heroes and I'm just going to call defense.
Yeah, literally.
And if you don't win, I just go blunder on all the horses. If you win, cool, I just defensed. I have 3 fate, 3 wounds. You're not going to kill me in a turn.
Yeah.
But this list, on the horse, essentially he wants to go for combats of opportunity because he is a lot more vulnerable on a larger base. He doesn't have quite as many attacks. He's only 5/6 base. But he can, on a couple of turns, get some high impact damage when needed. And then other than that, he's moving around to buff. He can also, like, in the late game, if you don't need his buffs anymore, you can send him off to like go and hold an objective in the last couple of turns. With the movement of the horse, he gets versatility, and he's still not that big of an investment. He's only, 150, 145 with this setup?
Yeah.
145 with this setup, which is pretty mid-tier. Like, that's pretty reasonable for what you're getting.
Exactly. Like, realistically, that's the cheaper end of big elf heroes.
Yeah, and he's still putting out the buffs, he's still giving you the fight, he's still giving you the terror, he's still giving you that turn of knockdown. The turn of knockdown with strength 4, like, behind it is really big.
I think that's really what makes this list show up.
It shreds D6 armies. You're like, cool. 5s on, 2 or 4 dice for a dwarf, That's crazy.
Exactly, yes. I think this list, although it is very low model count for 750 points, or relative to what I like playing.
I think 37 is a respectable count for an elite army.
It's pushing into that numbers where, like, I think if you hit above 42 models, that's when you can pretty safely say this is a relatively, like, horde-styled list.
It depends on, if you're playing 4x4 at 750, which I think most people would say you do, I think this is the good place to be, about 35 to 45. Higher than that, you start to get diminishing returns on your models, unless you go into, like, absurd numbers for, like, full, like we were talking about that 60 model 650 list.
Yeah.
That's reaching into overwhelming numbers where it's, like, it's just, like, cool, I don't have diminishing returns. It doesn't matter because I have, like, 20 bow shots, so I can just choose to fight wherever I want on 3 fronts.
Yes.
But if you're, like, at 45, 50-ish, it gets a little bit harder, and you don't have, like, the tools to fight on multiple fronts.
Yes.
So if, like, 35 to 45, I think is ideal. I mean, the on-foot Thranduil one before, with Lake Towners brought into it, was only, 42?
Yeah, 41 or 42.
42-ish. Yeah. So, like, you're only, like, 4 or 5 models down, and your entire list quality is way higher.
Yes.
And you have the same might, and you have a way better second hero for killing power. Like, you have a lot going for you. Sure, Thranduil's less powerful himself, but he's close enough, on the turns he charges in terms of damage output. He might even be higher, technically, like 6 dice to wound versus 5.
Yeah, in this list, he is the model that sits in the second rank, right? He almost becomes a caster at this point.
Yeah, and looks for the combats of opportunity. Like, when he goes to the knock prone, he can go off a heroic combat off of that, because he's safe, and then he can just, like, either go into, like, kill a banner or something, or go just back to being a buffing piece. He's very versatile. And again, because he's so low cost, you don't actually have to worry about him getting that much damage done, and you can just, like, almost focus on having him be like a shadow to Dane. He shadows Dane. If something's coming to threaten the pig, he comes in and supports. If not, he goes in occasionally, does, like, 1 or 2 fights, and then runs back. And you just keep him safe.
Exactly. And I think the Iron Hills contingent of this list is an incredibly hard thing to move, because you're layering Thranduil's terror over a defense 8 line. Like, those two things combined is just such an obnoxious thing to try and come up against.
And the crossbow power is huge as well.
Exactly. The only thing I will say about this list is you're using most of your models to have spears built into it, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it is something very important to note. You have a lot of spears in this list.
I would probably... I might even suggest shuffling the spears off the shields onto the crossbows. But that's annoying because the modeling with Iron Hills sucks.
Yeah, that's...
But, like, if I was optimizing the list, I'd probably just take all 12 spears off, put them on the Iron Hills crossbows. So I have 12 shield Iron Hill Warriors.
Yes.
And then bring 3 glaives.
Yeah. Genuinely, I think if I did the bothering to do all shield and sword Iron Hills dwarves, I think I would just use those points to just give glaives to some of those bow.
Like I said, 6 spears on the crossbows, 3 glaives on the bows.
Yeah,
that's
I think that's probably what I'd do.
That's the optimal way to run it, but it also means you have to convert 12 Iron Hills dwarves.
Which, I mean, look absolutely stunning. A friend of ours and fellow Dicebearer, Scott, has a stunning army.
Just use grip hammers and give them swords.
Well, he does it even better. He does just really subtle conversions.
Yeah.
To just like on the actual Forge World models to just give them the swords, and they still look.
Does he have a mix? I feel
he
like
has a mix. He has a mix of like
he has Grim Hammers with the Iron Hills shield and a sword.
Yeah. He also has like Hazard Guard doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
With the double, like his army is a mixed match of all three dwarven factions, but he still has a very distinct dwarven fact. It's if anyone ever gets the privilege of looking at one of Scott's armies, it is genuinely a delight because they are stunningly painted and stunningly converted. But regardless, this is a cool list. I think someone should run the Dane and the Dad list.
Nay! Alright, this is the old Cav list. This is, I think this is fun. This was run at Masters by Adam Jenkinson.
Yeah.
A similar version of this, obviously a 650 instead of 750, but it's basically the same concept. So Thranduil with the full kit minus bow. So this is the second most expensive you can make him. 5 points off. And then 17 cavalry with shields. Legolas and Hawks with Orchist. 7 cavalry with shields. And then a cavalry with shield and mana.
Yeah.
Very straightforward list. You have Legolas with the bow, so if someone's playing a no-shooting army for some reason, you can technically kill them to shooting the death.
I'd still do 2-ups just to spite.
Cool. You can dismount someone's horses and be really annoying. It makes your list way more effective against their heroes. So you have during those sort of justling turns, you just 2+ his horse every turn.
Yeah, literally.
And that's it. I think that's a good use of Legolas. And then the rest of the list is very straightforward. You just go in hard, abuse that 6-inch banner to get a lot of wins. I use the +1 to wound to get a lot of kills on the turn you charge. Any of the turns you don't charge. And then you just, just do Thranduil things. He's on Elk. He's got that sword. He's getting high damage output. This is the full threat Thranduil. Yeah, it's a very straightforward list. There's not much to talk about.
This is the equivalent of just the baseball bat list, right?
This is a baseball bat. It's maybe not the best baseball bat in the game, but it's a really cool baseball bat.
Yes. It's just that list that is very obnoxious to deal with if you don't have the right tool for it, right? Like, Elven Cavalry are fight 5 cav. That is scary, full stop. Whether you win the move off or lose it in the turns after you slam with the enemy, that is still fight 5 cav. And the scariest type of player is the player that knows every time I win a move off with an all cav list, I'm just going to fade. Like, that is genuinely terrifying. Letting Thranduil and Legolas just walk around the place, be fight 6 heroes or fight 7 heroes. They have terror put into the list, so even if you do get caught out, you have cab with terror on it. Like, not many people are going to get a lot of consistent charging, and it's happened to me before. You snake eyes the hero that you thought was going to charge, and suddenly his 2 friends are caught right in front of Thranduil. Thranduil and 4 friends dog pile countercharge you. Suddenly your hero's at third of dying because Legolas just shot his horse out the turn before, and it's all gone absolutely like
the terror bubble is what makes this like actually threatening.
It goes from a cool gimmicky list to an actually scary list to deal with, I think. Because of that terror bubble, basically. And it's insurance of even if you lose move-offs, your opponents might have some model standing still, which means that you're not getting 6-on-1 every fight, blah, 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 blah.
You have so many cav, you just make a wall. You're never getting trapped.
Well, no, I don't think you make a wall. I think you just go super light on your... Like, I think you're super lazy on your movements in terms of, like, only half your cav is charging each turn.
Yes. But, like, you have so many cav with a banner that you can just be a wall and have a second rank ready to back up wherever you need help.
Yeah, I think that's how you want to play it. And I think Legolas in this list wants to play your extreme flank. And
if anything, he's probably a model who's not charging. He's sitting in the back to call nice moves and just shoot.
Literally, that's exactly what I was
charge on opportunity, basically. Yeah. When the time comes, he's just sitting like 7 inches away from the fighting and going, oh, that's an annoying fight. And you know what he can do? This is disgusting. Let's say, all right, I'm going to charge my 1 bodyguard into Thranduil to stop him charging. I'm a genius gamer. Legolas, 2+.
2+.
Might. Legolas can now charge. Thranduil can now charge.
Yes.
Because Thranduil hasn't moved yet, and if he's unengaged in combat...
He can move, yeah. And I'm... like, it is... Yes.
I just thought of that. That's upsetting.
I mean, it doesn't work necessarily like that because the shooting phase comes afterwards. You'd have to do the throwing weapon style.
Oh,
weapons.
you're right. Actually, no, I'm dumb.
I was about to say, I did it during...
I forgot about spells. I was like, wait, no, I was thinking about like a spell. All right, never mind. Yeah. Ignore me. I'm cheating.
I did it with a throwing weapon against... who was it? Michael and his Easterlings. That's right. I killed the new... what's the shaman name?
Bolga.
Yeah, I killed them because a cav model went to charge right next to him. to keep him nice and safe into two enemy models, or two of my models, sorry. A little guy with a throwing dagger just comes up behind him for a 3-point trap, kills the cavalry model. I go, well, that's a nice fat bubble. That's a 4-point trap on the new shaman. Let's kill him because he just did tremor through a defense 3 line.
I'm like upset I cheated.
Yeah.
Never mind. All right, not listen to anything I say about this game anymore.
I mean, even further than that, though, like,
but still, that
yes.
2+ shoot to free things that are in danger or to set up for next turn is nice. Like,
yes,
being able to like, if you have a model that's trapped, or like by like, or like you can break your guys that are traps by like shooting the model that's trapping them off, things like that. You have a lot of versatility shooting into combat with Legolas after the fighting started.
And if you're shooting a horse, like especially if it's a hero's horse without a horse lord, if you, as long as you hit with that 2+, you can guarantee the kill on that pony if you're willing to commit might points to it.
Yes.
And like, I have seen it happen to me before in a game where I charge in a big bad scary model that's gonna murk Thranduil because it's cancelling out a cav charge or even causing a cav charge itself, and has a friend or two next to it. Suddenly, I drop my cab bonuses, I'm not knocking down, I'm not doing the traps, I'm not doing whatever it is, and I'm the one who's on the back foot, because Thranduil's high fight than me.
Because he's going to win over the long run.
Yes.
It's very hard to outfight someone who starts higher base.
Yes, you have to coup de grace them. Or get very lucky and hope that the Thranduil, who's a... if he's
4 to 6 dice.
Yeah, dismounted 12 dice hero. Yeah. Like, it's tricky. And I don't think people realize how scary a terror-causing cav can be. So
I do. I had to play against Andrew Coleman playing it.
Yeah, I love this list. I think it's sick. So
thanks, Adam. You inspired me. That list was... I loved it.
Yeah. Alrighty, shall we jump into our final thoughts on that sort of stuff?
The Halls of Thranduil, an excellent list. I think it's one of the thing about this list that I love, I just think it's a really fun list to play. Like, it's got so much going on for you to think about and to maximize your impact, and it's very rewarding to play. Like, I have just, like, every game I've played, I'm like, I've played better than last game. And, like, slowly adding up the things to get the full effect of every model in the army. And I still have more to go. Like, that's the cool thing about it, is that there's still more I can be doing better. Like, I know that. And that's very rewarding feeling to get from an army. Because there are some armies that are like, oh, cool, it's my, Boromir banner blob, and I'm going to walk it into people at fight 5, and Boromir's going to burn his might to kill everything. The only thing you have to worry about is, have I positioned my banner Boromir well? And that's about it.
Yeah. And have I blown too much might too early?
Yes.
Is the only other thing to think
Whereas,
about.
like, with Thranduil, you have, like, multiple auras to juggle. You have your spell casting. You have your, rangers and how you're going to use them. You have your elven cloaks and how you're going to use them.
Yeah.
You have two-handing. You have shielding. You have so many things you can maximize with.
Yeah, really importantly, you said it as well. You have two-handing. Your elves, you have two-handed. They're not wet noodles.
Do you understand?
Actually, no. The problem is the Mirkwood elves are wet noodles because they're resin and their swords go all pool noodly. So those ones, I can want people saying elves hit like pool noodles.
Do you want to?
But it's +1 to wound pool noodles. So I don't know what they're arguing
episode
about.
on this. Like,
We should do it.
I don't even need to be here. I'll just put a slide that says, "Please two-hand with elves." You can go for half an hour, and I'll just upload. We can just
the problem is,
that.
I will go for half an hour,
and we can upload
and then
that.
people will tell me afterwards, "Oh, you didn't bring up that elves can't wound things." That'll be the problem, because it happens every time I've ever seen someone talk about an elf list. Someone comments, "Oh, elves can't wound anything, so they're a bad list." And I'm like, "Are you serious?"
I do it how upset you are about this. It's so funny.
Oh man. If you're ever playing me at an event and you want an easy win, just talk about how elves can't kill anything, and I'll just get so triggered.
And then call the TO over and say he's slow playing me. He won't shut up. He hasn't moved for 25 minutes.
The problem is I start yelling at the TO about it. That'll be the real problem, hey?
Yeah, then he gets DQ'd and thank you, I can win an event finally.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough. Oh, I love it. But yeah, Halls of Thranduil. Yeah, they're on this.
Can we finish?
Yeah.
We done? Good play League.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Alrighty. Well, if you did make it to the end of this clown fiesta, disaster, that's a good word for it. If you did make it to the end of this episode, thank you guys so much for listening. We do this as something for leisure. It's not something we take as a business plan or anything like that. Likes, comments, all that sort of stuff.
You do this so you can rant about two-handing.
More or less, yeah. Like, likes, comments, subscribing, that is there to show that there is interest and there is people that want to hear more of this content. So if this is something you did like hearing, consider it. You don't have to. Listening is more than enough. And otherwise, have a lovely day.